I'm here with Toby with Westside Electric. They are the ones who installed this Anker system. And Toby, I got some questions for you. First off, how does this system differ from more traditional setups like Generac or even the Tesla Powerwall?
It's a good question. The standby generators and Tesla Powerwall systems are fairly different than this. The main difference is that the Anker system with the battery backup is more of a consumer grade product where it's easy to retrofit into a system, an electrical system, compared with a Powerwall where it's integrated into a rooftop solar system or a generator system where it's actually a fixed installation that's built into the home, plumbed in permanently to a natural gas system. Essentially, the Anker system is just a much more user DIY friendly version of that system, and it's made to basically be purchased by a consumer and get installed rather than have a full service installation method.
Okay, so like from a full service perspective, if I wanted to get an Anker system, what does that process look like? Like I go on the website, I fill out some forms for Anker. I know for me, I had to do some filming of like where some areas around the house I might want to have it installed, and then that gets sent to you and you guys kind of look at that, or how does that process work?
Yeah, so essentially, like you said, you go onto the website. If you're interested in buying an Anker product, you purchase it. You can select whether or not you want to include an Anker authorized installation credit. You pay for that, and then basically depending on where the job is, we would get sent that job from Anker. Those pictures that you upload are then sent to me as the estimator. I determine whether or not I need to go out and do a site visit. A lot of times I do like to do a site visit just based on the complexities of integrating that into a home. So I'll go do that. Once I get together a plan, then I can send pricing. And it basically just allows me to have a full picture of what we're looking at, what the customer's trying to put together and trying to accomplish with their project, and that helps me figure out the perfect installation method.
And my setup was a little bit complex in the terms of where my panel was located was next to a kitchen window, which meant that we couldn't put the batteries there, and that would have all been outside and kind of encapsulated in one area. And that is why we have some of the components all in the back of my house versus closer to the front. But we still have the smart panel up there, and we had to wire it through here. So can you kind of is that a typical kind of scenario, or is that more complex? What are some of the issues that you guys ran across when doing that?
Yeah, so each installation is very different from the next. I mean, when you're dealing with trying to integrate a system that's somewhat rigid into a different home every time, people's electrical systems are set up differently. And so depending on where the customer would like the equipment, based on their preferences, or where the equipment can actually be installed based on our code requirement for clearances from things like the window you talked about, installations can vary pretty drastically. So that's why I like to do a site visit most of the time, because then it really helps me to understand the customer's wants versus like what we can actually accomplish. So yeah, it can be as simple as everything gets installed right next to the electrical panel. That's the cheapest, easiest installation because everything's right there. Wires are shorter. It takes less time to do all that. Or in your situation or other situations that are even more complex, we've got the battery pack that's more than 50, 100 feet away from where the power panel is going to sit. So we kind of have to figure out how do we get wire from A to B, and what does that all look like in relationship to the type of home. Do we have a crawl space? Is there an attic? Things like that we need to find places to run wiring. It's just different on every job.
And you mentioned code, so does this require permitting? And if it does, do you guys handle all that process?
Yeah, so that's one big thing that you want to make sure is that the National Electric Code is pretty strict, and you want to hire an electrician that's going to follow those codes. And the checks and balance for that is the county or city that you live in, pulling a permit, making sure the inspections happen correctly. That's something that you want to look for in your installer, because there are a lot of quote unquote electricians out there that may or may not pull permits. And it's an important step to ensure that the installation is done properly. It's a way to make sure that your electrician is doing the work correctly, and also to cover yourself insurance purposes for your home. You don't want a fire. There's a lot of different safety issues with an installation that can go wrong if they're not done properly. So having a permit pulled and having proper inspections go on throughout the project is very important.
Does anything in this system stand out to be more complex or simple to install?
Versus another model on the...
Yeah, like say some of the competitors or even more traditional.
Yeah. Well, the newest version, which is what you have, the Anker E10 system, is really nice because it gives you the option of a multitude of different ways to do the installation. Like your home, we were able to migrate some important loads into that power panel and use that as a sub panel, so we don't have to back up the whole home. When you have two large panels, you're not really going to need everything. You want your most critical loads. So we can do it that way. There are times where we've used that power panel as an automatic transfer switch for the whole home, which basically you run the main wire from your meter through it, and then it backs up the whole home without having to move any circuits around. So you can do that. And you can also install and have that power panel feed an auxiliary sub panel that already exists. So if you had a critical loads panel that you used to have a small generator or something and you wanted to integrate the battery system, you could also take that power panel and have it be the intermediary between the main panel and the sub, and just feed that sub panel and not have to do any rearrangement there. So the Anker system is really good in that sense, where it can kind of work in any form that the customer wants it to. It just depends on what they've got in their home.
And you can do that essentially at any time. It's not like once you install it, you're stuck. So like obviously this is a modular system from a battery perspective, but it's also modular from a power panel perspective.
100%.
Correct?
The more battery packs you add, the more power capacity you have, the more circuits you can kind of back up. So it gives you the ability to say, start small, put your garage door opener on there, or some emergency lights, or your refrigerator, the things that you really need, and then down the road say, hey, I really like to have my AC unit because we're having blackouts during the summer, or whatever it is. And it gives you the ability to then add more battery packs, migrate more circuits into that backup system. It's a really good way to kind of future-proof yourself going forward.
And obviously with a power panel, we would need to have an electrician come out and help with that. But if I was just adding a power pack, I could do that on my own, right? It's literally I just need to be able to lift up or put next to it another battery and connect it through. For sure,
yeah. On this power port here, you've got multiple connection points. You can just buy another set of batteries and plug it in. The Anker system integrates it right in. They are heavy, but if you got two people to help lift them, then it's a doable thing for sure.
Yeah, they're really heavy. I tried lifting some of them by myself onto, out of my garage, and it was impossible for me to do it by myself. I think they're 130 pounds
130
for the
pounds.
battery.
Yeah. So two people definitely is needed for sure.
Before ordering a system like the Anker E10, should we talk to an electrician ahead of time and make sure any unknowns or gotchas or how to prepare?
Yeah, I think it could be important. It kind of depends on what you want out of your system. Like I said, an installation can be more complex than it looks on the forefront of it. So, that installation credit you might pay for, it might cover most of the cost of your installation. It might only cover half or a third of it, depending on what you want. A lot of times, a customer, because I work in this field every day and I kind of know what it takes to do things, it's a lot easier for me to say, yeah, that's going to be a 1, 2 day, 3 day project, whereas a customer might not understand the full breadth of that project. So it is sometimes good to get the advice from an electrician to kind of know the scope of what you're looking at for the project, so you can kind of budget for the costs. Beyond that, I mean, it's you can go online and you can probably search, what do I need for power to back up, the things that I need in my home. Like really think about, what do I need in a power outage, or what things in my home draw a lot of power that I may want to offset with battery. AI, ChatGPT, any of those things can give you a good idea of what things you might want to look at. So that would be a good way to kind of do some research beforehand without talking to an electrician. But like we would go out and do free estimates for people and just kind of walk through what this installation would look like and kind of give them a budget too. So it doesn't hurt to have an electrician, but you also could probably get a good idea of what you're needing out of your system as far as capacity too from just doing some research online.
You had mentioned some critical pieces of circuits like the AC. Obviously, I'm on well.
Yep.
My understanding is well pumps can draw, especially at the start, the same amount of like current as like an AC unit, which is very hard on the electrical system, especially like, you know, some type of backup system. So how does that compare with from like an Anker system? Like, how can you know that it's a great system that can handle that versus, again, like a traditional unit and like the load that it can handle?
Yeah. So you have kind of two pieces to the battery system, and as far as its capacity, you have total storage amount, which is kilowatts, and then you have actual output, like instantaneous output, kilowatt output. So, you know, I think the E10 can go up to 8,000 kilowatt hours at a time, whereas some other systems are less. But so you definitely want to look at the specs of the unit to know how much power can that unit supply at once. Because you're right, like when your well pump kicks on and your AC kicks on, a lot of these pieces of equipment that have motors in them have startup surges, and they use a lot more power right at the very forefront. And if you have a lot of those running at the same time or kicking on at the same time, you could trip the inverter, it could reset the system, which isn't catastrophic, but it's something you have to prepare for, because then it's a manual type of reset. So it's something to consider. The E10, I think on the market, the ones on the market, has the highest, you know, instantaneous output of any of these consumer grade type battery systems. But there is some limitations with that. So that's something to consider. And then as far as overall capacity, with this being modular, there's no real, I mean, for a residential home, there's no real concerns about total storage on the unit, because these things, you can go up to, I mean, way more than you could ever really need on a day-to-day basis for a home as far as storage capacity is concerned.
Yeah, and the fact that you have a generator and it supports solar, like, and if you get enough batteries, you literally could probably go off-grid if you wanted to,
for
right?
Sure.
Yeah,
for sure. Yeah, and then the nice thing about the Anker system and some of the other ones too is that, yeah, they do have a solar component that you can integrate into it. The other nice piece of that is going back to the Tesla Powerwall and some of the grid tied systems, is that this is not grid tied. So there's no rigmarole you have to go through with utility to get it approved. There's no difference in utility equipment needed. Whereas like a Powerwall system, some of the Enphase systems, some of these systems that are built into rooftop solar systems, there's a lot more involved with even just the setup of those systems, because they are grid tied. They can potentially backfeed to the system, to the utility system, whereas these are not made to do that. So it makes it a lot simpler to do than something that's grid tied.
and that means the installation is probably quicker than as well, right?
100%. Yeah, it makes it that much simpler from a customer, endpoint stance, where it's a lot cheaper, as well as for us as an electrician. There's less paperwork to do. There's less planning up front for all of it. So it's definitely, while the rooftop systems and the integrated battery systems can be more robust, this for the general population is probably more than sufficient, and quite a bit cheaper.
So talking about, it's not grid tied, how long does an installation, like from maybe like a basic to a more complex, like what's the range of installation time that it would
Typically, for some of the more straightforward ones, you're looking at a day project. Typically, our guys are going to be on site for 8 hours. A lot of times, I like to have a helper and an apprentice on site for part of the day to help lift the batteries and kind of get everything put together. But it's a day project for the straightforward ones. Everything's kind of going in the same spot. Whereas like a more complex one, the one we did for you, was more of like a 2-day project. I haven't seen projects that get more than 2 days usually. But there could be instances where something's more complex or the components are further away from each other that could push into 3 days. But it's usually a 1 to 3 day is probably a good estimate for time.
Yeah, and so my components are kind of far apart again from the panel. What's the kind of furthest distance that can be supported for, like, from the panel to the batteries?
So as far as I know, there's no actual physical distance limitation. But at a certain point, then you start to have to think about different parts of the electrical system and voltage drop and upsizing wires, and it does start to get more expensive the further away you go, based on labor, material, all those things go together. So while there's no actual limit, it does tend to get cost prohibitive once you get up to, I throw a number out there, over 150 feet, something like that.
That's really far.
And that's like maybe not 150 feet as the crow flies, but wire length, right?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, you could do a run that's 150 feet that only travels 50 feet if you've got to go up, over, around, down, and kind of go around the world. So that's something to consider too, is what is the wiring pathway?
I see. What can a homeowner do ahead of time to help the installation go more smoothly?
Well, it's an easy thing to say, but not as easy to do, is keeping the work areas clean. That's one big thing we see all the time. Is I go out and I look at a project and people have got boxes stacked in front of their electrical panel, or there's a coat rack in front of the panel, or where they want the batteries. There's no way for me to get there. Pretty common, unfortunately. I know it's hard. People gather stuff. I do too. But that's the big one, is make sure the areas where we need to work is clear. The other thing is we're going to be drilling. We're going to be cutting pieces. We're going to be creating dust. We always bring vacuums. We always bring drop cloths. But fine dust, no matter how much protection you try to do, gets places. So if you have concerns about that, move your valuable stuff out of the room that we're going to be working in. Get your own tarps, sheets, however you want to do that. Just know it is construction. We try to be clean. Our guys are instructed to always vacuum and clean at the end of the day. But there's only so much we can do. We're not working in a clean room environment. So having that understanding that it's still a construction site, trying to keep your children, your dogs out of there. We love dogs, we love children, but when we're working, we want to have a clear area that's got no hazards. So those are kind of the main things. And also having a somewhat of an idea of what you want on backed up. You don't have to know everything, but to be able to have a conversation about what's in your home electrically that you think you might need. Our electricians will help you on site figure that out too. But think about it. Have an idea before you go into it of what you want backed up.
And I think something else too is, like, maybe have a backup plan of, if the first location where you want it doesn't work out, where else would you potentially want the installation to occur?
Yeah, and that goes back to what we were talking about before, is you may have this grand old vision of how you want it to look, and that's great. And we can probably do it, but you might not like how we're going to have to do it. We may have to open up drywall to get over there. We may have to run this 2-inch PVC conduit on the outside of your house. Like, there's constraints we have to work within to make it code compliant and make it work. So, like you said, being flexible and having a plan B, C, 2 or 3 different ideas of, if that doesn't work, it's a good idea.
When deciding what circuits to back up, what is the advice and guidance you give customers on helping make that decision?
Yeah, so it can depending on the customer and their needs. If I'm dealing with an older couple that has trouble getting around the home, I might say, yeah, you want all your lights. For a younger family, or couple or something that may not need all their lights, maybe you don't prioritize that. But some things that are worth having, are definitely going to be, you want to be able to get out of your garage. If you need a garage door opener to get your garage door open, put that circuit on there. I mean, that's a big one. Well pump. If you have a well pump, you need it. People are starting to put their ACs on it because we are having summer blackouts. It used to never be a thing, and now it is. So that's something to consider that people don't always think about. Most people in this area have gas furnaces, so those are real easy to back up. They don't draw very much power. That's a important one to have.
Refrigerators and freezers as well, too.
You don't want to lose that big freezer you got in your garage with all the stored meat that you have. You don't want to lose your food in your fridge, so those are big. I think really for this type of system, it's going to be a lot of what do you really need? What are your necessities? And I think most people, if you think about that for a little bit, you can kind of come to an instance of, if I don't have power, if I typically don't have power and I now have the system, what am I going to want without going overboard? Because like we said, like the total running output of these is not going to be able to do the whole home all at once. But it is going to be able to back up the necessities of things. And it is going to sustain you for a long enough time to usually where power comes back. So it's really just making sure you have the things that you need to live.
Yeah, for me, I was like, obviously, well is the absolute most critical thing for me.
Yeah.
And especially the trees in my driveway. When we had the ice storm a couple years ago, the trees bowed down to where I couldn't leave my house. So not having water and not being able to leave, I had to like walk over to neighbors' houses to ask if I could get a ride to Costco so that I could get bottled water just to have like drinking water. But people don't think about like toilets and washing your hands and things like that. Even cooking where you might need water to cook. But there's other things for me too, was like internet, because the cell signal out where I live is really poor.
Sure.
If power goes out, sometimes the cell signal goes out as well. And so not having internet, I don't know if it'll be available if the power goes out in general, but I would assume hopefully. So that still gives me a connection into knowing what the hell's going on outside of my home.
Sure.
My gate, right? If I can leave and the gate's not open, like it's kind of a pain in the butt. And then the furnaces. But the one thing I didn't put on there was like the washer and dryer. And I was sitting there thinking, should I have done that? I don't know. I don't figure the dryer probably draws a lot of power as well. And how often are we actually going to be using that during a power outage situation?
Yeah, I would say, I mean, the washer dryer is one where I have people asking that a lot, because while it is, I guess you could consider it a luxury, it's kind of, everybody's just used to having it. So if you're going to have power out for a week or more, I mean, I look at my stack of laundry after a few days and I'm like, I'm never going to be able to get all that done. So after a week, it becomes a mountain. So I think there's value to having it on there. The nice thing about the system, you can put those circuits in that backup panel if you want. If you don't end up using it, you know, it's not like, it's not drawing power when you're not using it. So if you need it in a pinch and you run your dryer and it drains the batteries, that's on you for doing that. Maybe you're able to dry your clothes and that's worth it to you. But to have it in that panel, it doesn't hurt anything. So, you know, there's always value to doing that in case you just have to have it. You know, there's always that potential.
And 12 circuits is actually a lot. Like when I originally was like, 12 circuits, it doesn't seem like a lot. I feel like I have a lot more stuff in my house for that. But then when I was going through and filling out what I wanted on it, I was like finding myself trying to find things to put on it that I felt were necessities. And they definitely, for sure, not everything on that 12 circuits is not a necessity. I think like 3 or 4 things were like, I'll just put them on there to fill up the circuits, right?
Yeah. And the other thing that I mentioned before is you have that 12 circuit load center inside the power panel. You also have the ability to feed another sub panel. So if you wanted to add more circuits to that, we would just put a small sub panel next to that power box and you can add more circuits to it. So, and on top of that, even more so, you could integrate it into your whole home. So you could make it so that an entire panel passes through that and just uses as a transfer switch. You don't even use the load center inside it. So it does have the ability to, to scale to how you want it based on what your needs are. Another part of our business is whole home generators. I mean, we sell Kohler generators. They're whole home integrated systems. They're installed on a concrete pad. They're plumbed into the natural gas system permanently, and they're tied to an automatic transfer switch that, when you lose power, it senses it and kicks on the generator and everything runs the way it normally does. I mean, that is your Cadillac, so to speak, of backup systems. We install those. We also install smaller manual systems that have a standard interlock with your breaker panel and have a little inlet that a generator like this would plug into. That's, 10 times more cost efficient than a whole home system and allows a similar amount of backup in a manual form. So those two items and the battery system, they're kind of all fit into a similar category, but are very different in ways. But this generator system is nice because while it's really nice to have this backup system, if you don't have solar integrated and you don't always have sunny skies to, power that solar, you kind of need a source. If you're going to have power out for a few days or more, you need a way to recharge this battery pack because you are going to burn through it. So yeah, while it would be nice to not have to rely on a fuel source like propane or natural gas ever, it's not quite the reality at this point. And so having that backup generator to recharge your batteries is a nice little peace of mind when you don't know when you're going to get power back to be able to charge these things back up. So that's the nice piece about this. And the Anker system is really nice because it has a DC cord that's proprietary that allows you to charge that battery pack even quicker than you would through just AC power. So the whole Anker ecosystem is really set up for that purpose, and it works great.
And I love the fact that it's tri-fuel as well. You don't have to pull on a cable to start it. There is a way to start it through the app, which works great. To me, that was well worth, and actually I didn't even know they made tri-fuel systems. That's how I'm not really connected to generators in that sense, right? But what about if I have a generator already that's connected to my house, can I still integrate that in some way, or do you pull that off?
Yeah, so there is some complexity with that because you've got multiple sources of power to deal with, right? You've got your utility feed, you've got your standby generator power, and then you've added a third potential feed to it, and maybe even a fourth if you integrate solar into it. So the big concern there is that all these sources of power, they cannot be feeding at the same time. You don't want a battery system feeding power to your generator. You don't want a generator feeding stray power back to the utility. There's all these checks and balances that you have to install that make sure that those things aren't all running at the same time. So the way the Anker system does it with this DC power cord is it communicates to each other. I'm not going to be supplying power at the same time I'm going to be charging power. Whereas for us to do that with a generator system, it's possible, but it has to be done through a custom means. So while it can be done, it's a little bit more complicated. And with an Anker system like this, you have inside that power panel, it allows you to integrate a standard generator inlet. So there are ways to do it. It adds a little complexity to the project.
So what surprised you the most about installing the Anker E10 system?
So I would say the Anker E10 system, and I would probably say this for any of the battery backup systems right now, is that they are pretty new technology. So while they're really great products, and especially the Anker system, it does a really good job of doing what it says it's going to do. The installation, there are bumps and bruises along the way. So every installation we've had so far, there have been slight complications that add to the complexity of the project. So for instance, there's been software issues, or there's not complete detail on the installation manual, and there's parts that are vague that lend itself to not being the most installer friendly. So I would say the important thing is get with an electrician that has installed this equipment before, because for a guy going out there that's never seen it before, it's going to take him more time, and there's going to be more frustration around it because it is such a new thing. While the technology, as far as the equipment's concerned, is very straightforward. It's a sub panel. I mean, it takes power from one side and it sends it to another side. That seems very, very simple, and it is, but there's a lot more technology going in there that that adds to the complexity for an electrician, especially that hasn't seen it, that's used to wiring up dumb equipment. There's more to it than that. And so because it is such a new technology, with just having the electrician figure it out, and being that guinea pig type of customer, you're going to deal with a little bit of that. So just be prepared to be flexible when you get one of these installed, because not everybody has installed them before. And even us, we've done, a dozen of the Anker systems. We've done some other brands of them. We have a few under our belt. We still come across things on installations that we didn't expect and need to be figured out. So that's probably the big one.
Every home's a little bit different, and even like I would say traditional installations of like dumb equipment, you still come across every now and then gotchas or surprises that you have to solve for. This is just a new type of problem solving. I would call it, right? Speaking of costs, like how does the cost of something like this compare to like doing a full home traditional generator? Is it more expensive or cheaper, or what do you think?
So I would say it's probably, at the end of the day, it's probably similar with the equipment you're buying. I haven't actually looked at the pricing of the equipment, the Anker system, but from my recollection, I think the equipment plus installation is probably going to be similar to a whole home generator, maybe a little less expensive. But that, especially depending on the capacity and how many battery packs you can end up spending a good chunk of cash to just buy the equipment. A generator and transfer switch equipment is expensive too. So comparable, I would say, probably a little bit more on the cost for the whole home generator, just because it is a fixed system. There may be some landscaping involved with trenching or pouring concrete pads, things like that you normally wouldn't see with this type of system. So the generator systems are more complex, so they can be more expensive in that sense. But equipment-wise, it's probably similar.
What about the other competitors for battery backup that are more grid tied? Are those more expensive to install?
Yeah, like a Powerwall or something like that. Yeah, they certainly are. I mean, especially the Tesla stuff, it's going to be quite a bit more expensive. And then, like I mentioned, with the utility coordination and permits and things like that, it gets quite a bit more expensive because there's a lot more corporate hands in the pie there. I mean, it's like dealing with trying to get a smart meter that reads the power getting fed back from the solar system. Just doing that takes a lot, just to figure that out. So it can definitely get quite a bit more expensive.
And I imagine permitting too can take a while, right? So you may want to start an installation, but have to wait a while till you get permits pulled and everything else.
So
right?
For like the grid tied system, for sure, like you could be looking at weeks and months of stuff. Whereas like this type of system, you could, us as an electrical contractor, we could pull a permit and get an inspection tomorrow. Okay. I mean, it's very straightforward for this type of installation, whereas it can be more complicated for the bigger program projects.
If someone's considering a system like this, what's the biggest piece of advice you could give them?
I think the thing we talked about before is really put some thought into how you want the installation to look, as far as where it's going to be in your home, and then be flexible about it. I think the thing that people don't understand a lot of the times is that these things get designed by engineers in labs that never go out to people's homes to see how they could integrate in the real world. So there's always going to be surprises. So the customer that's flexible and realizes that is going to have the best outcome, because at the end of the day, we're human too. I go on a walkthrough for half an hour, 45 minutes, and talk with a customer, and I put together this grand plan of how I think it's going to happen. When my guy goes out to finally do that project, it's pretty rare that it goes exactly the way that I thought it was going to go. So as a customer, to be aware of that, because the last thing you want to do is be very rigid and think this is going to go exactly how I think it's going to go, because you're going to be disappointed. It may not be the end product is disappointing, but having a difference of what you expected to happen, if you're not able to be flexible with it, can be disappointing. So I always try to tell customers, we're going to try our best to make it exactly how you want it. It may not be that way. The important thing, though, is to have a conversation about it, be open about it, communicate, and we'll come to a place where we understand what you want and what we can do to make it happen, and just be flexible about it. I mean, that's the big thing.
Can you install a system like this indoors? Like, obviously minus the generator, but like the batteries and stuff, could you actually put it in like a closet or something like that?
Yeah, you certainly can. There are some codes around how that's done. Like if you were to have that system installed in an attached garage, you would need heat and fire detection as part of that, just based around the potential of a fire. Lithium catches on fire, it's not a good thing. So that's a code. There are some other codes around having the equipment installed inside that may be different depending on where you want it and what your home is like, but it's definitely feasible. And I always tell people, if you can have your equipment installed undercover or inside, it's going to last longer. Even if it's rated to be outside, it's going to last longer if it's inside, just because of the weather, especially in the Pacific Northwest. I mean,
the rain and the dirt and everything.
So it's definitely worthwhile to consider putting inside if you have the space, and we can help you figure that out. So.
And being outside, how much does the weather impact the battery? So if we're like in the Northeast and severe cold, or if you're like in Arizona and you have severe heat, how does that impact the
so
system?
you have like a operating temperature that's ideal, right? I mean, there's a range of temperature. I don't know exactly what it is, but outside that range on either end is going to strain the equipment. So too hot is not great and too cold is not great. The efficiency will go down. Whether that's total output or charging times, there are going to be things that are degraded based on the ambient temperature surrounding it. But this equipment is made pretty robust, and it does have a pretty wide range of temperature ranges. So it's not a huge deal, but you don't really want it sitting on the south side of your house and getting up to 120 degrees. That probably is not ideal. Whereas in either, you don't really want it buried under a pile of snow. So it's all about it's rated to be outside, like I said, but it still is a piece of electronic equipment. It's got a lot of technology in there that is sensitive. So protecting it as best you can is the way to go.
Awesome. Toby, thank you so much. I appreciate your time.
Glad to be here. Yeah, of course.